pretty much anything. We can be experts in anything that we plug into a Google search. And what we're going to talk about today is how we really know what is going to work. And we're going to focus on different aspects of nutrition and what it takes to have a healthy balance of food in our diet. And that's going to keep us energized for our daily lives with or without fad diets. As we start, I would like to see if there's any specific questions that people are going to want to have answered today. So if you could put those questions in the chat, that would be great. Otherwise, as things come up, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat at any time. But if there are any questions where you specifically would like those to be answered, feel free to stick those in the chat and I'll try to address them as we progress. For our overview, we're going to be starting with our My Plate recommendations, moving on to the building blocks or foundations of food, 5 tips of choosing the right diet for you, and a little bit about nutrition labels, portion control, and then ending with hydration and how it supports a well-rounded diet. Starting off with our My Plate. So take a look at this plate and what do you notice? That fruits, vegetables are going to be covering half of the plate. Grains only take up about 1/4 of the plate. So think about spaghetti and what your plate might look like. That spaghetti or pasta, it's not going to cover the whole plate with the My Plate recommendation. Grains are only about 1/4. That you want to try and incorporate all 5 food groups multiple times throughout the day, whether that is for your meals or snacks. So if you don't have a fruit during your lunch, that's all right, but maybe in a snack later on during the day, that's something you can incorporate in there. For the recommendations, fruits, vegetables, and dairy. For fruits, we recommend for both men and women that about 2 cups a day are consumed. For vegetables, about 3 cups for men and about 2.5 cups a day for women. And then when it comes to dairy, for both men and women, it's about 3.5 cups. For what a serving might look like when it comes to vegetables, that's going to be about 1 cup of raw or leafy vegetables. It could be 1 small baked potato or 1/2 cup of cooked vegetables. And that's approximately 1 serving. For our fruits, it's a little bit less. It's going to be around 1 piece of, or about 1/2 of grapefruit, 1/2 of canned or fresh fruit, or about 1/4 of a cup of dried. Then when it comes to our dairy, that's just going to be 1 cup of milk or fortified soy milk, 1 cup of yogurt, 2 slices of hard or processed cheese. Otherwise, 1.5 cups of ice cream is around what a serving might look like. For our grains and proteins, a serving and recommendations. Recommendations are going to be around 3 to 4 ounces equivalents to grains instead of using more grams or a different percentile. We count our grains and proteins within ounces. So 3 to 4 ounces are going to be the equivalents of grains for the dietary recommendation, and then 5.5 to 6.5 ounces are going to be the equivalent of what the recommended or what a serving would be for protein. And then breaking that down to what it might specifically look like is about a slice of bread would be the equivalence of our 1 ounce for our grains, and then for a protein, it could be around 1 egg or 1/2 of an ounce of nuts or seeds. Now, diving deeper into the building blocks of food, the macro and micronutrients. We're going to be starting with our macronutrients and for our protein. So protein is very important. The reasoning why it's important because it is it functions as a building block for most tissues in our body. This is going to be included for all our bones, muscles, cartilage, skin, and the blood. They're the binding block for enzymes, hormones, and vitamins. For how much we need to consume or the recommended amount, it's going to vary depending on your gender, age, and activity level and fitness goals. But recommendations are between 10 to 35% of your total caloric intake. Otherwise, breaking that down, it's about 0.4 to about 1 gram of protein for each pound of body weight is usually where that 30-ish% is going to break down to. For our carbohydrates, they are broken down from sugars and starches, and they're going to provide our body with energy that's going to be required to live, exercise, to think at a normal capacity. So carbohydrates are our main source of energy for our brain and our central nervous system for our sources of fuel for standard functioning. So most of our carbohydrates should We're going to look to try to gain them from a high quality, simple or complex carbohydrates. So limiting those lower quality simple carbohydrates. And if weight loss is a goal, that can assist with this. We're going to dive into that in just a little bit. For how much? So your needs, again, are going to vary depending on your gender, your activity level, your fitness goals, but it is recommended that about 45 to 65% of your total caloric intake is going to come from carbohydrates. And that is based off an estimate of a 2,000 calorie a day diet. So simple and complex carbohydrates. Simple carbs are quick sources of energy. They can be broken down in the body very quickly and used for energy. That's going to be your typical spike in blood sugar when they are broken down. They're not always bad. So fruits and some vegetables, though, um, so some fruits and vegetables would be considered more of a simple carb. And they're still going to have carbs, but it's going to contain less of those high sugar items, or that makes it simple carbs. It's more of a sugar basis. Those complex carbs are going to have more fibers in them, and that's going to make digestion slower, which then the body's going to digest over the sugars over a long period of time, and that's going to create a steady flow of energy from the sugar, so no spike, unlike your simple carbohydrates. And that's going to help keep our blood sugars more at a normal rate. So an example of these are going to be like rice, oats, and wheat. For the difference between low and high quality. For a low quality carb, they're going to be higher in calorie count, low in fiber, and low in micronutrients. Typically, this is going to be processed versus a high quality carb is going to be not necessarily high in calorie count, but it's going to have higher fiber, which is a good thing, higher fiber content. And usually it's going to be high in one or more micronutrients and little to no processing to get the final product. So, example, these are going to be something like quinoa, oats, buckwheat, bananas. There's not a lot of processing that goes into any of that. They have higher fiber content and higher in micronutrients. Again, the recommended amount for dietary intake is somewhere between 45 to 65% of our total caloric input. Then moving on to our fats. Oh, sorry, one thing I was going to mention. With protein and carbohydrates, each calorie is equal to, for each calorie, it's going to be 1 gram is 4 calories. Unlike our fats, is going to be for each gram is going to be 9 calories. So if you're looking at if weight loss is a goal, sometimes addressing fats can be a little bit more important or easier to do because for each 1 gram, they have a higher caloric value. So fats still are important. Fats are a major energy source in our body, and they're going to aid in our vitamin and mineral absorption and transportation throughout our body. It's going to help us protect our organs and help control our growth, our hormones, our insulin regulation, and our basic metabolic processes. Fats do affect the blood lipid profiles, or HDL, LDL, and cholesterol. And typically, we see a label of good versus bad fats depending on how it affects the levels. So our HDL, or high density lipoprotein, and then LDL, or the low density lipoprotein. Now, for the recommendation, or how much, it's recommended that 20 to 35% of our calories we consume are from fat sources. Now, there's 3 different fat sources. We have our trans fats, our saturated fats, and our unsaturated. For trans fats, it's recommended that less than 1% of our fats consumed are from trans fats, ideally none if possible. Saturated fats is around 5 to 10%. And then mono and polyunsaturated, those healthy fats, are going to be the rest of our diet around, or the rest of the fat consumption, somewhere between 20 to 35%. Breaking down those fats a little bit further, so trans fats are labeled as bad fats. They increase our LDL, and that's going to hurt us or increase our risk of type 2 diabetes. Which, why are they around anyways, you might ask? They are typically found in more fried foods. So oils are stable under high repetitive heat. It's going to be cheaper because they don't have to change the oil out very often. So avoid trans fats if possible. Saturated fats are going to occur naturally in animal products like cheese or meats. They can, and then contrary to about the 90s, used to be labeled as that saturated fats were a bad thing. But contrary to that belief, there are studies that show that saturated fats do, unlike what we previously thought, in fact, can increase our HDL, that's good. And that being said, you shouldn't go crazy. You should still be, monitor, just be aware of how much we eat. But saturated fats are less hurtful than we had initially thought. Though then unsaturated fats, these are what would be classified as a good and healthy fat. So you have your monounsaturated fatty acids and your polyunsaturated fatty acids. So both of these help with insulin regulation, transportation of hormones, and nutrients around the body, and they're typically found in plant oils and other variety of sorts. And then each plant oil is going to have a different stable smoke point, so cooking temperature. And if you exceed that temperature, you turn these unsaturated healthy fats into, when heated too high, into trans fats. And every oil is going to have a different heat point. So with our avocado, it's going to be like 520 degrees. Sunflower oil, 440 degrees. Butter is 350 degrees. Fahrenheit, extra virgin olive oil, 320. So just thinking about how hot the stove top gets, just kind of be aware of what we're cooking with. So the bottom line for our proteins and fats is that they can vary how much our dietary recommendations are based on our gender, our activity level, and our fitness goals. It's recommended for protein that 10 to 35% of our daily caloric intake comes from protein, and that 20 to 35% comes from fat sources. Fat is necessary to our diet for energy and growth. Trans fats have no health value, saturated fats have little health value, and unsaturated fatty acids, those poly and monounsaturated sources, offer a wide variety of health benefits. So those are healthy to include in our diet. And then due to a higher calorie count, like I was saying, that for each gram, it's 9 calories versus for each gram is 4. Monitoring fats can be helpful if weight loss or weight management is a goal of yours. Bottom line for our carbohydrates is that they break down into sugars to provide energy. Simple carbohydrates break down the fuel faster than complex carbs. And then a majority of our daily caloric intake will be carbohydrates. 45 to 65% should approximately come from carbs. And we'll talk a little bit more about diets later on. Your dietary fiber is also important for overall health when partnered with proper hydration. A little bit more for the dietary fiber. It's important aspect to implement fiber into our diet. This is going to help aid in regulating our blood sugar levels and our cholesterol. It's going to also help reduce the risk of our cardiovascular disease, obesity, and type 2 diabetes, because we can't fully digest it, so it takes a little bit longer to process, and it helps the feeling of being satiated, that feeling of full, which can help remove regular waste from our body and nutrients absorption in the stomach. Dietary recommendation, you can gain benefits. The minimum recommendation is around 14 to 15 grams, and that is around up to 35 grams that can still offer health benefits. These are going to be whole grains, green beans, celery, zucchini, avocado, etc. And then if fiber is important and you're working up closer to that 35-gram range, making sure that you do pair that with proper hydration. Talk about hydration at the very end. All right, micronutrients. They are very important. Our body's fuel and energy comes from macronutrients, and that's why we need a larger amount of those nutrients. However, all of the little bodily functions our body innately performs requires all the essential micronutrients to do those things. This continues, and stops with organs, hormones, our hormone function, the breakdown of macronutrients for energy, contracting muscles in our body. That's the job of the micronutrients. So without the focus of your micronutrients, you wouldn't be able to break down your macronutrients, or you wouldn't even be able to move your eyes to read the screen in front of you. So they control our muscle function. For example, this is a little bit grim, but potassium is, yes, good for bone health, but it also is needed to release our muscles. So if you don't have enough potassium in your bloodstream, you may notice that your muscles may cramp up. And that's because potassium binds to our muscle and it helps relax them after they contract. So without potassium, forever cramping muscles will appear. And that's why when things die, or when humans die, we're stiff as a board. And after death, that's because there's no nutrients moving throughout the body, so we cannot release our contracted muscles. How much do we need? We can go through each of these 23 essential micronutrients, but that would take a long while in relation to your percent of your daily value. So rather than going through this for the next 30 minutes, we're just going to move on, but we're going to teach you how to read nutrition labels and track food better to keep an eye on how much micronutrients you are getting. If you are interested in the recommendations, if you are curious, I will put a link in the chat of a source where you can go to look at the individual breakdown of micronutrients is, because the recommendations do vary between each micronutrient. So I can put that in the chat later. But where to find them. So fruits and vegetables are probably the best way to find and absorb minerals and vitamins. Many people use a multivitamin to support their intake, and that is great. That's totally fine. What you'll notice though is that with micronutrients is that they have different chemical structures to be broken down depending on how our body needs to process them, and their stable forms outside the body. So sometimes the stable form in a shelf vitamin is not the form that can best be absorbed or utilized by our stomach. So if you feel like you are taking the prescribed amount from the side of your bottle and it looks like it's ridiculously high, that is the reason, because the structure of the form isn't absorbed as well in our stomach. So you may need more in your system to absorb that for your recommended dietary intake. So it might be way off and you're like, whoa, why is it so high? You don't actually break down all of it that's going to be in that supplement. Fruits and vegetables, they are loaded with our essential vitamins, minerals, and fiber, and they are great to carry along as a snack, and they taste good. So thinking about fruits and vegetables, the color and variety is going to be where we're going to get the most for our vitamins and minerals through our food. So eating fruits and vegetables of different colors is going to give our body a wide range of viable nutrients, fiber, potassium, vitamin A, vitamin C, and tips to get more fruit and vegetables into your diet. The biggest key is going to be to keep them readily available, to buy for your snacks or replace some of those low, simple quality carbs that you typically would buy. And fruits are going to be fresher and have a better flavor anyways. When choosing fruits, it's right to choose fresh, frozen, or canned. If they are canned, preferably in water. If it is syrup or salted water, you can always wash that off. Otherwise, dried is another great recommendation for our fruits. Serving up, and then some other kind of quick tips for serving up vegetables if they're not really your cup of tea. You can oftentimes serve them with raw vegetables with a low or non-fat dip, and try to have that routinely with our meals. A Coconut milk solids with dill, garlic, and onion is a very good dip combo. You can add fruit to your cereal. You can pack or buy lunches that include both fruit and vegetables. Mix your vegetables into your salads or casseroles, soups, or sauces. Dried fruit as a snack is a wonderful kind of little side dish. Have fruit in some sort of dessert. Pre-cut vegetables are great for quick snacking. Making smoothies or blending them into with fresh fruit, frozen fruit, with low-fat yogurt, milk, and ice is a wonderful combination. And you can always, if you want, you can set a goal for trying a different fruit or vegetable each week. And when eating out, there is typically an option to substitute vegetables or fruits with or instead of a fried option or a fry. And always there's sometimes an option of a salad bar for more fruit and vegetable options. All right, so moving into the 5 steps of choosing the right diet for you. So, what is that going to look like? Here's just 5 quick tips. For number 1, keep most, if not all 5 food groups, your fruit, vegetables, grains, proteins, and dairy, which is going to be all your macronutrients, carbs, protein, and fats included in all meals. You want to incorporate nutrient-dense foods, so those good fats, those whole, healthy, wheat grains, fibrous foods. Those are going to be your nutrient-dense foods. 3 is going to be awareness of portion sizes. So you can hold your, just kind of to keep yourself accountable for the total amount of food you consume. It's good to just have awareness, whatever that might look like for you. Your diet should be easy to follow and not very rule heavy, and it should be safe. So not asking to dramatically cut calories or fasting. So making sure, and it is easy so making sure it's easy to follow, that high importance in nutrient dense foods. And then so going over a few style diets that you might be familiar with or not be familiar with. The DASH diet is the dietary approach to stop hypertension. This is a diet, a nutrition plan that's going to emphasize foods that's high in fiber, calcium, potassium, magnesium to help lower our blood pressure. The Mediterranean diet is a healthy diet that emphasizes on plant-based foods and healthy fats. Our flexitarian diet is a style of eating that's going to encourage eating mostly plant-based foods, which allow for meats and other plant products in moderation. The Weight Watchers does have a healthy style. It is a behavioral weight loss program that helps people lose weight by making small everyday changes and focusing on nutrient-dense foods. The Mind diet is another healthy one that it's a combination of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet to create a dietary plan or pattern that focuses more specifically on our brain health. So those are healthy diets. They encompass all of our, maybe not specifically emphasis on all main food groups, but they hit all of their proteins, fats, and carbs equally or within modification for the specific diets. A not so good diet is going to be diets that are going to eliminate food groups or macronutrients. This is going to be hard to keep up for extended periods of time, and it is difficult to maintain. So diets that are not so good are going to be something like the keto diet, the Atkins diet, a fasting diet, your Whole30 diet, and the paleo diet. Those are diets that eliminate either a full food group or they eliminate one of our main macronutrients. So those are very challenging to sustain. Working to nutrition labels and portion sizes. So reading our nutrition labels, starting off is going to be for our serving size and servings per container. This information on the food label is going to be based off of your servings, unless it's something like a 20-ounce bottle of soda. They're going to have a readjust that to that it shows both the serving size and the package amount. That's going to be important to be aware of. And they're trying to make it a little bit more realistic, but it's important to see how many servings are in the package. If you double the servings that you eat, make sure that you double the calories, nutrients, and the percent of daily value. One that sometimes surprised me after I didn't look at it for a while was the like taco seasoning for a taco packet. For some reason, for a while, I was under the impression that it was just a whole taco packet for it was a serving, but actually there's, I think it's like 4 to 6 servings within one packet. So just things like that, the awareness just to see what you're putting in. Then checking your calories. Note that the calorie value provided are the calories per serving, not the calorie per package. So for my taco seasoning, little error there. That was just a little bit different of what was being consumed versus what I had initially intended. When purchasing items that say they're fat-free, this does not mean that they're calorie-free. So foods with less fat can have just as many calories as fatty foods or foods with fat. And sometimes those fat-free foods usually have added sugars to give them flavor. So then working to limiting fats, sodiums, and added sugars. The daily percent value provided on the label is for your total fat, which includes all the different types of fat. So choosing stuff with low amounts of saturated fat and trans fat, sodium, or added sugars can be a good tip for looking at a nutrition label. It's also important that we get enough vitamins and minerals. So if you are comparing foods at the store, you can compare foods while you shop, choosing food that has more nutrient presence per serving in relation to the calories. And this can be determined, it may determine which product you end up buying. For the total daily value, as seen here on the label, is based off a diet of 2,000 calories per day. That's going to be your standard label. And that's going to be what the dietary values that are displayed in grams, also in the footnote of the label. For your percentages, the percentage of daily value information are an easy tool for comparing when buying products if you are comparing them together. 5% is going to be on the lower side or less of our daily value. That's going to be low. And around 20% is going to be of our daily value is considered high for that serving. And it's also going to be important to examine the ingredients. So the ingredients are going to be listed in order of quantity in the product, typically at the bottom. from most to least. So generally, the fewer ingredients, the more natural, the more healthy the product or the item is. So paying attention to the first five ingredients, because those are what's going to be mostly used in the product. If that product indicates that's where you'll see if it's most processed or if there's artificial sugars. And if so, if those are in the first two, that may be not what you're wanting to consume, or look for a different option. For portion sizes have dramatically increased in the past decades, continuing to greater caloric intake to a vast majority of Americans. The Center of Disease Control and Prevention reported in 2024 that around 78.9% of Americans are either overweight or obese. This epidemic points directly to large imbalances between calorie intake versus our calorie expenditure. A Caesar salad has doubled in size in the past 25 years. A serving of soda has tripled from 6.5 ounces to 20 ounces. A cookie has quadrupled in size. Most single serving bags of chips contain multiple servings. And getting back to the basics of nutrition can help you achieve and maintain a healthy body weight. The goal is going to be to help you to determine how much you are eating and understand the food portions. Knowing how to eat is important for weight loss and weight management, regardless of what your goal is. So serving size versus portion sizes. For food portions, so they have dramatically increased in the past 3 to 4 decades, and this mostly is contributing to, well, it's a greater caloric intake for Americans, and society has also had an impact based on how we eat. So for instance, if your parents, your grandparents, or you yourself were part of the Clean Your Plate Club, that eating everything off your plate, that club has roots back to the Great Depression when food was scarce and we didn't know when we would get it next. So whether you were hungry or not, you had better finish what is in front of you. And since then, there's been no shortage in food, and portions we give ourselves have increased. Partly because, in today's society, typically you won't have six siblings to share a meal with. And with the increasing variables that have changed, we still haven't changed our thought process, and that eating everything on your plate, no waste. And this is one of the biggest reasons why we have an epidemic in our society. And this epidemic points directly to a large imbalance between calorie intake versus calorie expenditure. So how can we avoid bigger portions and sticking closer to serving sizes? If you fill your plate to the My Plate guidelines, half your plate is fruits and vegetables, the other half is proteins and grains. It's important that you're going to want to pay attention to serving sizes when you eat, whether that's at home or eat out for dinner. At a restaurant, you can ask for a to-go container right away, and split your food even before eating. With some pasta meals, you almost can get 4 meals out of one main serving or what's presented to you. And you can serve food on a smaller plate, a 9-inch dinner plate, or on a salad plate to help serve smaller portions at one time. And to avoid overeating, slowing down can be beneficial. You'll be able to feel your hunger cues, which we typically, when those hunger cues are sent out, they only last for about 2 minutes. So oftentimes we can miss our hunger cues, and that could later lead to us kind of overeating and then regretting eating that third helping of pasta within 15 minutes. So a quick tip is to set your fork down in between each bite, finish chewing, swallowing before picking it back up again. And if you are hungry between meals, which typically people will be, and that is totally all right, is that you can choose a healthy snack, a piece of fruit or a handful of nuts, so that you avoid overeating or that you're not super famished for that next meal. Now, talking through hydration. So here's some few tips to increase our water consumption. To infuse our water with fresh fruit can be a big benefit, because I know a lot of people, I've heard, don't like, the taste of water. Just it's not flavorful. They enjoy consuming flavorful things. So spicing up the flavor with some fruit. If you purchase some free reusable ice cubes, it can make drinks more appealing. Having a larger water bottle to keep with you at all times, and challenge yourself to fill it up while you're at work a few times. You can cut up vegetables and fruits the day you purchase them, which is going to help increase some of your water intake. You can have a glass of water before your meal, which will help fill you up and keep you hydrated. And you can try out a variety of different decaffeinated teas or different flavor packets to put in your water. There are also a lot of great apps that are at our disposal. So setting reminders on your smartphones, planners, computers to help drink more water throughout the day. I know there's a plant app where you have to drink water to keep your plant alive, so because you're keeping yourself alive. For our water recommendation, it's going to be again difference based on our gender, activity level, and our overall goals. But usually the recommendation is somewhere right around half our body weight in ounces can be a good place to start. Now, for some, that's going to be too much. For others, that's going to be too little. But it's a good place to start, or somewhere usually between 60 to 80 ounces of water a day, and then adjusting from there. For every extra hour of activity that we add, you can add around 10 to 20 ounces of water to make sure that we are fully hydrated. So, in a quick summary, My Plate is a quick visual guide to see what food groups and portions should look like. Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats make up all of our foods. Those are our main macronutrients. Fruits, vegetables are important for our micronutrients, those vitamins and minerals for our body and our standard bodily function. Nutrition labels may be scary, but they aren't super bad once we kind of take a step back and look through them to see the breakdown of what the product is that we're going to be consuming. Meal portions have dramatically increased, and to try and shrink the serving sizes on the nutrition label to help moderate the food consumption. It's going to be also important to stay hydrated and drink liquids with low sugar content. Now, it's kind of a follow-up meeting with me if you have any other follow-up questions or looking about where to start with your fitness goals, any follow-up nutrition questions. If you have any questions about areas in your health or wellness in general, or if you're looking for some extra accountability, please feel free to reach out anytime, either on Teams or email. I would be happy to talk through any of your health or wellness goals, or if you're looking for just tips or accountability. With the fitness center, it's whether it's in person or virtual, it's $1 a day up to but not exceeding $20 a month. And under that $1 umbrella, you can access any consultations, group fitness classes, if you're interested in one-on-one check-ins, personal exercise plan, fitness assessment, consultations. That's all kind of included. So please feel free to reach out anytime if you are looking for assistance on any health or wellness matter. We do have, there's kind of a guess the macro game I've set up. Before that, though, I wanted to ask if there was any final questions that people had before we kind of go into a little guess the macro game. Or feel free to, if you have to run to another meeting, you can do that at this time. But if there's any other questions or things I did not cover that you had an interest in, feel free to unmute and say that, or to put that in the chat. About 30 seconds or so if I see any typing. Otherwise, I'll move on to our Guess the Macro game. All right, well, moving on to the game, but if you have any questions at any time or want more clarification about a topic, please feel free to let me know. All right, so guessing the macro. For this game, we're just going to see which macronutrient is most prevalent or present in the food. So feel free to put in the chat or just kind of write down your head. Just give a wild guess to how many grams are in each product for our carbs, fats, and protein. And then kind of as a little bonus, if you want, you can put a range or a guess on the total calorie count for that item. So bananas coming up first. Give you a few seconds just to come up with thoughts for what those might be. For our macronutrients, bananas are mostly a carbohydrate, minimal protein, and then fat. They are lower, and then that means they have pretty low of a total calorie count, most of that coming from our carbohydrates. Plain bagels from Ruger's Plain Bagel. So for our macronutrient, a carbohydrate is mostly where you're going to receive the calorie from this, but there's also a significant amount of protein in our bagels as well. And then that comes around to 300 calories for a full bagel, excluding any toppings. Applebee's French fries. So thinking up here, this is going to be probably a little bit higher in In fat, because it is fried, so we'll see what the breakdown is. Calorie consumption is going to be for a standard Applebee's plate, 538 calories. Breakdown, mostly getting our calories from those fats and carbohydrates. 71 grams of carbs, 6 grams of protein, and 25 grams of fat. So looking at that 538, sometimes that is a full meal for people, or more than a full meal than you might be eating at each individual meal. That would probably be aside from what your main meal would be. Salmon with only half of fillet. 412 calories, and most of salmon is going to come from protein. So it is a leaner, well, they say a lot carbohydrate, but protein and fats. So this would be considered, I guess, not necessarily a leaner meat, but it has healthier unsaturated fats and a few saturated fats in the salmon. For a large refillable movie theater popcorn bucket without butter. If you do want to add butter, that's going to be 130 extra calories on the top for 1 tablespoon added on. All right, so this one is going to be a little bit bigger than you maybe expected, but with around 23.75 cups of popcorn, salted, and just how they standard make it, it's going to be around 1,000 calories. So that's pretty high and about half of a standard dietary intake. For your macronutrient content, carbohydrates 148 grams, protein 25 grams, and then 49 grams of fat. So this would be what would be considered more of a heavily processed or added items, which shoots up your calorie content. Otherwise, that concludes. Oh, and sodium. Forgot to add sodium. Yes, high sodium content, which sodium is good to incorporate into our diet. And then, like anything, with a moderate consumption. With that, that is going to conclude this webinar today. So thank you so much for joining. Please let me know if you have any questions, and feel free to reach out anytime if you are looking for health or wellness coaching, or just want some more accountability or ideas to stay on track with any goals you might have. But thank you so much for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.